Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this NSA webinar titled Understanding the Challenges That Affect the Older Adult. The National Sheriff's Association has partnered with the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or the COPS Office, to reestablish NSA's National Association of Triads. Thank you to the COPS Office for your support. Before I introduce you to our speaker today, I will give you a quick overview of NSA. Chartered in 1940, NSA is a professional association dedicated to serving the Office of Sheriff and its affiliates through education, training, and general law enforcement resources. NSA provides these resources and advocacy for sheriffs, law enforcement, criminal justice professionals, and their communities. There are currently over 3,000 sheriffs nationwide. Our membership base includes over 13,000 individual members, including sheriffs, deputies, and other law enforcement officers, public safety professionals, and concerned citizens. A quick note for our participants today: this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website at sheriffs.org. We will have time for questions today at the end of the webinar, but please keep yourself muted at all times and use the chat box to submit your questions. Please email me at kbarksdale@sheriffs.org if your question does not get answered during our live webinar. Our speaker today is Angela Deleon, who is a nationally certified crime prevention specialist. She currently serves as People's United Bank's Master's Program Coordinator, a program designed to build financial awareness and prevent senior citizens from fraudulent activities. She is the former director of the Connecticut Triad Association. Angela is also a national trainer for the Office of Victims of Crime and is the only person in the state of Connecticut certified to teach senior sensitivity, senior crime prevention, and elderly interviewing techniques to Connecticut law enforcement agents. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Christy. Hello, thank you all for joining us today, and I am so grateful to NSA for this webinar today. Thank you. Take a look at the overview. These are some of the things that we're going to talk about today: the purpose of this session, the statistics, the challenges that affect the older adult, physical and cognitive, interviewing skills tailored to older adults, common crimes, elder abuse, and current scams. And then, of course, we'll open it up to Q&A. Here are some of the references. Next slide. Here are some of the references that I used, but as I said to Christy, a lot came out of my head after doing this for over 30 years and working with law enforcers, and I've been so lucky to do that. Next slide, please. The purpose of this webinar is to talk about how many seniors we have now in the United States and how they're going to impact your work. The average age of America's population is increasing rapidly. According to U.S. Census, there were 40.3 million U.S. residents over the age of 65 in 2010. In July of 2019, there were 54 million. So this training will help teach you some of the physical and mental conditions which can affect older adults and how to detect them and how to deal with them. Next slide. Next. These are some of the statistics that I found. Seniors are known to have the most disposable income in our country. Most elder abuse has a financial basis. Therefore, having a good rapport with local banks, that is so, so important for law enforcers, because most elder abuse, as I said, has a financial basis. So having this rapport is key for law enforcers, to have a rapport with local banks. Now, the scammers know this data too, and it's from the Federal Reserve. 65 to 74, the median net worth is $224,100. This is throughout the U.S. At age 75, it jumps to 264,800. So it really gets up there. Estimated that 90% of elder abuse is at the hands of family. And it doesn't have to be a blood relative. It could be a trusted person who is considered family. And when I do the seminars, I talk about people you've broken bread with, you know, that you consider family. And as the head of our fraud department states, fraud never sleeps. Now we'll talk about some of the challenges, some of the physical challenges that affect older adults. Vision changes and visual loss may cause sensitivity to light. Glare raises havoc with seniors' eyes. So if you're doing a traffic stop and you have the sun in the older person's eyes, you can talk up a storm and they're not going to be listening because they can't see you and they're so uncomfortable. So make sure you get out of glare. Loss of depth perception. This happens at stop signs and when they're getting into traffic. You know, you can see a puff of white hair in the car in front of you and the person is just waiting and waiting to get into traffic. It's because depth perception is a problem with seniors, so they take a little bit more time. Difficulty distinguishing colors. Blues and greens tend to go together, tend to run together due to the yellowing of the whites of the eyes. So if you say to them, please take the blue form, show them which one the blue form is, because if there's a green form in there, they're going to get them confused. Techniques to help vision impaired individuals. Keep a magnifying glass in your vehicle. You know, they have them down at the local dollar stores, the magnifying glasses. Just grab one and keep it in your vehicle for someone, possibly their glasses were smashed in an accident, or
the job is 510.
You're going to
Go to the Bluetooth menu.
reduce unnecessary movement and sit. This is most important. Sit close and maintain eye contact to maintain attention. And do not speak loudly. Most people with vision impairment are not hard of hearing. Now we'll go on to hearing impairment. About 10% of the population have hearing impairment. 1 out of 3 after 65, and half will have hearing impairment after 85. It is more prevalent in men than it is in women. Sorry, guys. Behaviors attributed to hearing loss, lack of normal response. Okay, you're telling the person that the house next door was robbed last night and did they see anyone in the neighborhood? And she's looking at you and saying, oh yes, my granddaughter is a police officer in Ohio and I'm just so proud of her. So you're wondering, why is she responding in this way? She probably didn't hear you. So repeat in a very tactful manner. Turning an ear towards you, or they're in your face, okay? They're sitting so close to you and trying to concentrate on what you're saying, probably because they didn't hear you. So change your normal voice. Speak louder, don't yell. And women, if your partner is male, let them speak, because we tend to have a different pitch to our voice, and it's easier for someone who is hearing impaired to hear a male voice. Enunciate clearly and slowly, but don't shout. This is so important. Keep your face visible. If you're wearing a mask, take it down. Let them see your face, let them see your mouth, because a lot of people who are hearing impaired are very used to being hearing impaired, and they will read lips and they will read expression. And begin speaking only after you have their attention. Also, move to an area with less background noise. If you're on the street, get them into the car and speak to them in the car. Use gestures such as point to the chair, you know, to ask them to sit down if you think they didn't hear you. And if you want to ask them to have a glass of water, if they need a glass of water, show them that you're drinking a glass of water. On to the next slide, please. Foot and leg conditions. I know this is an ugly picture, but it is a true picture and is one that came into Bridgeport Hospital. A woman came into Bridgeport Hospital. These were her feet, and she had a caregiver who was about as old as she was, and neither of them could get down to clean her feet or to cut her toenails, and that's kind of what happened. So she came into the hospital, and they did take a picture, and that's one that I'm using. Biophysical changes that cause leg and foot pain are poor circulation, diabetes can affect the feet, corns and calluses, blisters, and arthritis. Those are just some of the conditions. Techniques to help. Ask them if they'd like to sit or offer them a chair. Give special attention to anyone with a walker, a cane, or crutches, and be mindful of physical impairment if checking for sobriety. Remember, alcohol assimilates differently in older adults due to other health conditions. You know, somebody who used to have 2 martinis at lunch can have a couple of sips and get a bit tipsy. It can cause sugar levels to raise or lower. It can cause irregular heart rhythms. Excessive use can speed up pulse and cardiac activity. Alcohol abuse and alcoholism are common and under-recognized in older adults. At one time, I did a program when I was in Bridgeport PD, and we did a tea party, but it was addressed at alcoholism and older adults. And we found out that more than half of the older adults in senior housing were self-medicating with alcohol. So it was quite an interesting time to address that situation. Next, please. Also, if someone comes in to the police station or wherever and they're in a wheelchair, and if they are the victim or they're the person who you need to talk to, get down to their level, okay? Speak directly to them. Because it's so much easier for us to talk to the person who's pushing the wheelchair rather than getting down and speaking directly to the person. So aging causes bone marrow to disappear, bones become brittle. Loss of muscle tissue causes less physical strength. So seemingly simple activities such as writing, accessing a registration, removing a license can be painful and slow procedures. Some maladies which can cause mobility problems are arthritis, stiffness and inflammation of the joints, and Parkinson's disease. Those are just some of them. There are a lot of others too. Techniques to assist those with visible mobility problems are offer them a felt-tipped pen or thicker pen if you're asking them to sign something. Firm chairs are easier to sit and rise from. Walk shortest distance, use elevators, ramps instead of stairs. And post-COVID, handshake. Tuck both hands delicately around the older person's hand to give a gracious handshake, but gentle enough not to squeeze or injure a fragile hand. Don't give one of those good old boy handshakes because you could hurt them very much. Normal aging can cause response time to change. Next, please. Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Dementia impacts all 5 senses. Smell is one of the first to be affected. Facts about Alzheimer's. 6.2 million Americans aged 65 and over are living with some form of dementia. 72% are 75 and older. 1 in 9 people, and I think these statistics are staggering. 1 in 9 people over the age of 65 have some form of dementia, and 2/3 of them are women. 50% of people.
What's happening, Kristen?
I'm not sure. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to mute people. Oh, are you there, Angela?
Yep, here.
It seems like you
50%.
unmuted.
No, I didn't touch it. Didn't touch it.
Okay, keep going.
50% of people with dementia are victims of abuse or show signs of mistreatment by a caregiver. Next slide, please. Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia are disease of denial of the family. If you tell a family that you think that their loved one has dementia, they're going to say, oh, no, not my grandfather, not my father, not my mom. You know, they did this, they did that. They remember who their bridesmaids were when they got married. Well, that's because the long-term memory goes last. The short-term memory goes first. Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia whose symptoms may include confusion, personality changes, memory loss, and no inhibitions. They don't have any filters anymore. Conditions that can cause dementia or dementia-like symptoms: dehydration, as simple as not drinking enough water. And most seniors do not. And if you watch them take a pill, they'll take a pill and just take a little sip of water, where we're walking around with large bottles of water all the time. So dehydration can cause dementia-like symptoms. Drug interactions, you know, they have drugs for their feet, drugs for their head, drugs for their hair, whatever. And some drug interactions are not good and can cause dementia-like symptoms. Parkinson's disease, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, can cause dementia-like symptoms. So it doesn't always have to be Alzheimer's or some bad form of dementia. Depression, especially with COVID and after COVID, so many people are suffering with depression. Nutritional deficiencies, they're not eating properly. They're not cooking for themselves anymore. You know, they don't have anybody to cook for, so maybe they just grab a bag of potato chips. But that can cause dementia. Frontal lobe dementia is something that can happen to younger people. Lewy body dementia causes delusions. My friend's father had Lewy body, and he was seeing giraffes in the backyard, and she's like, Angela, what's going on? My father owned a business. He's telling me he sees giraffes in the backyard. Well, very possibly it was Lewy body dementia. Next, please. This is a friend of mine's mom, and she allowed me to show you this picture. You see, the first picture was when she was going out on a Sunday afternoon. She had her hat on. She was looking really spiffy. In 1 year, Lewy body took over her mind, and there she is, slumped over in a chair with a baby doll. And she was thinking that that was one of her children. She taught school. She was a fabulous cook. She was a wonderful, wonderful homemaker. And this is truly what happened with this terrible disease. Also, her son has just retired from a police department. He was a cop for 30 years. Now, this we're going to go through together. Techniques to assist those. Next slide, please. Techniques to assist those who have visible forms of dementia. Maintain eye contact. Be patient and ask one question at a time. Offer assistance as needed and address them by name, and usually their first name. Avoid negative statements and quizzing. Give directions slow and one step at a time. Allow time for response with patience and understanding. And I know that especially in very busy police departments, you have another call just waiting for you. When you are dealing with someone who has a form of dementia, you are going to have to take a lot more time. Also, don't argue with them. You won't win. They may be argumentative or combative. One of my friends, I met her coming out of the plane in Minnesota, and I looked at her and I said, "Why are you limping?" She said, "I went to a senior housing complex because they were having a problem, and one of the men with his cane whacked my leg, and this is what happened." So you also have to be very careful, because sometimes when people do have forms of dementia, they become very combative, so be careful. Again, Alzheimer's is a disease of denial of the family, so you have to be very, very tactful in how you talk to the family about it, because they really don't want to realize that this could be happening to someone they love so much. Let's go to the next slide, please. Interviewing older adults. Go to a quiet area of the home. If you're going to their home, go to a quiet area. No TV, no radio. Let's shut everything off. Give them enough time to accept the shock of seeing you at their door. As I said, you have a call like this, you are going to have to take extra time. Look for clues of elders' cognitive and physical limitations and respect these limitations. If you're going to interview them about something, they're going to ask you because they respect the badge. And they're going to say, "Oh, come into the parlor, please, have a seat, officer, have a seat, sheriff, have a seat, deputy." Go into the kitchen. Straight back chairs are much easier for them to get in and out of, and will also keep their attention clearer, and better lighting. If they offer you a cold drink or food, don't just stand there with your hands in back of you, kind of clasped in back, you know, that typical police stance. Tell them, say, "You know, I would love a glass of water." Take a glass of water. It will calm them down. Even if you don't put it to your lips, you've taken something to drink or to eat, and that just immediately makes you friend. Be patient, listen carefully, use empathetic statements. Don't talk in cop talk. Don't tell them, "You know, well, tomorrow I'll meet you down at the DB at the station." You know, "I'll meet you down at the police station, and I'll meet you at the detective bureau." Because we're so used to talking with other law enforcement that sometimes we just revert back to talking what I call cop talk. Wait for 60 seconds, then interrupt them, because it's taking them a little bit more time to think. Expect to repeat yourself. Even if you're in a rush, again, they're not, so slow it down. Move them away from sun glare. If you leave your business card and say, "You know, if you have a problem, please call me." If your business card is written in small print, turn it over and write in large letters and large numbers. Victims need to air their emotions. Again, it takes time. And they're going to tell a story about trauma. Show empathy and don't rush. Offer to contact a relative, a friend, a victim services, if it exists, if you have victim services, or a crisis counselor, but try very hard not to leave them alone after they've experienced a trauma. Next, please. Elder abuse, national statistics. Elder abuse has climbed during the pandemic, and I'm sure you understand why. And also, studies claim that only 1 in 44 cases are reported to authorities. 1 in 44. That's shocking. But you know, older people today are very stoic. They don't want to put their problems on the street. Also, if they've been abused by a child, a lot of them feel as though, well, maybe they deserved it. Maybe this is why they're being abused, because they didn't raise the kid right, you know? So usually it's not reported. So 1 in 44 is pretty shocking. 9 in 10 who commit elder abuse are family members or other trusted individuals. Seniors are more likely to die due to elder abuse. Multiple forms of abuse can and often do occur at once. So if someone is being abused physically, they're being abused financially. So many times it's a double whammy there. Next, please. Next slide. The types of abuse. Okay. Physical abuse. Physical abuse can be pushing, striking, slapping, kicking, restraining. This is so shocking, isn't it, that someone could do this to an older person? Shaking or other acts that can cause harm. Can also be too hot or too cold of water when they're being bathed, improper use of medication, or isolation or restraint. Emotional and psychological abuses, verbal berating, harassment, intimidation, threats of punishment, demeaning comments. Oh, Mom, you're getting so stupid in your old age. Coercive behavior or isolation from family and friends. Also, leveraging power. If you don't do this or whatever, you're going to end up paying the consequences. Very sad. Financial exploitation, which we see in banks just about every day. Methods of financial exploitation are forging signatures, stealing or misusing money or possessions, coercing or deceiving into signing a document, improperly using guardianships, conservatorships, or power of attorney, using an ATM debit card without permission. A lot of seniors will give the caregiver their ATM card to go to the grocery store, and as you know, many times they use the ATM machine for their own benefit. Most elder abuse has a financial basis. The average age of abuse is 78. That's just the average age. And 67% are women victims. Next, please. Let's talk about sexual abuse, okay? There is such a thing as a gerophile. You know, pedophiles, there are some people who are gerophiles. Non-consensual sexual contact of any kind, including assault or battery, rape, coerced nudity, or sexually explicit photographing. This does not happen to older adults. People think, oh, this couldn't happen to my grandmother. Guess what? It can. And involves one person exerting control over the other. Indicators. The indicators of sexual elder abuse are pain, itching, bruising around the breasts or genitals, stained or bloody underclothing. Now, self-neglect is something else that people, elder abuse, have. Self-neglect. Threatening his or her own health or safety by failing to provide himself or herself with adequate hygiene, food, water, medications, shelter, or safety. You walk into a person's house, they haven't paid the electric bill, so they are living with no electricity. That's self-neglect. Hoarding. Hoarding is happening so much. If you talk to anyone in the fire departments, they will tell you. They walk into houses, they just about can get through the aisle of a house to the bathroom because there's so much hoarding. And it is a form of self-neglect. It is a form of mental illness. So it is living in unsafe conditions. Neglect. It could be by a paid or unpaid caregiver. Failure to provide dependent senior with life necessities, such as food, clean water, shelter, personal hygiene, clothing, medicine, safety, or just basic comforts. We had a case here in Connecticut where they had found an older person in a basement. He had a pot, a big lobster pot to use as a bathroom. They were given water in a bottle, and they lived in an old mattress. It was awful. That was total neglect. But there are other parts of neglect that are not that bad, or they are bad, but they're not as tragic as that. So beware, look for them, look for the signs. Abandonment, when a designated caretaker or legal guardian leaves an elder person to fend for themselves. And remember that 90% of abusers are family members or those that they consider family. Now, the other part of abuse is scams and fraud. And that is possibly done by someone they really don't know or someone they met on the computer. So I thought this was an interesting statement, and it's that 24 elderly are abused while you brush your teeth in the morning. Next slide, please. Seniors are the victims of choice of most scam artists. Seniors are more vulnerable because they live alone. A lot of them live alone. They're not computer savvy, but they use email. And they don't know, delete, 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 you know. They'll use email and get in a lot of trouble, clicking on something they really shouldn't. Have ready access to cash, and especially during COVID. You know, they stashed a lot of cash in the houses because they didn't think they could get to the bank. Have time to listen to phone calls. You know, someone calls them up in the day and they talk to the cat all day. So someone calls them up and says, Mary, oh, Mary, I love your name. My grandmother's name was Mary, and you know what? We named our daughter Mary. So I'm so glad to talk to you. All of a sudden, they are thinking, this is a friend. This is a true friend. They named their child Mary, and they start to talk to them. That's when they get in trouble. They live in older homes and can't do their own repairs. May have large amounts of cash on hand, as we said, that especially during COVID. Have been more isolated and sad during COVID. Others are worried about deportation of the family. The victim may have negative experiences in their country with law enforcers and fear. This could be a factor. Scammers prey on fear, loneliness, and isolation. Next, please. Again, seniors, the victims of choice. Psychological, emotional vulnerability. Scam artists help them into a heightened emotional state. Fear, violent crime. Fear if the perpetrator is young, okay? Easily intimidated. Embarrassed to admit they've been swindled. Well, you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody. I've been swindled, but you know what? If they tell my kids, I'm going to end up in a nursing home. So they don't tell anybody. Scammers make personal connection in order to identify emotional triggers. As I said, the guy who would call them up and say, oh, my daughter's name was Mary, and all of a sudden, you know, all her defenses are down because she feels as though this is a friend. Scammers expose the victim to positive emotional stimuli, hope of winning huge prize, or finding love. When a victim is in a heightened emotional state, they are no longer thinking rationally, but reacting emotionally. And as AARP says, the scammer puts the victim under the ether. Let's talk about some red flags of abuse. Neglect. They have dirty clothes. They have bed sores, unusual weight loss, lack of needed medical aids, financial abuse, caregiver living off the elderly. And you can see that the son or daughter hasn't had a job in years, and they're living off the mother's Social Security. Suspicious changes in wills or power of attorney. Bills not being paid. We have a senior who we suspect is being abused financially. One of the first things we do is check their accounts and see if they're paying their bills. Significant withdrawals or unusual purchases. Now, they're probably not going to go out and buy a $10,000 computer, okay, at 89 years old. So beware of significant withdrawals or unusual purchases. And again, this is why you have to have a good rapport with the banks. Emotional and psychological, forced isolation, withdrawal or apathy, nervous or fearful of behavior. Physical problems, bruises, broken bones, burns, abrasions, and bed sores. If you walk into a home and there is a bad, foul smell and there is a bedridden person there, put on your gloves, put on your mask, and remove the covers. If you see bed sores or signs of abuse, call the medics in immediately. Now let's talk about caregiver stress. Caregiver stress is not something anybody signed up for. You know, they've been so kind to take mom in, but if mom is combative or abusive, it's a real problem. So here are some of the confessions of a caregiver. Next, please. This year and last year especially, as the headlines change, so do the scams. There are so many scams related to COVID, or were so many scams related to COVID and getting protocol for COVID, whatever online, a lot of online buying scams. But let's go on to the next, please. Lottery and sweepstakes fraud. This is coming back with a vengeance. Tell the person, if you didn't play, you can't win. So foreign scam artists telephone or send mail to individuals in the U.S. informing them they have won the sweepstakes or the foreign lottery. And they ask them for money in order to get the money. Victims are told they must pay fees for shipping, handling, taxes. The victims do so by wiring money, sending a personal check, providing credit or debit card information, or sending a money order by overnight delivery or courier. In other cases, the victim will be mailed a bank check with instructions to deposit the check in their account. And they do that. They deposit the check in their account and get the money for it. It's a bad check. They end up being charged for the money that they took out, because after whatever so many days, the bank finds out the check was bad and they're liable for it. Remove the funds when the check clears and the wire funds to another account to pay for the fees. Let's talk about the grandparent scam. Next, please. Grandparent scam has been around a long, long time, but there are so many variations. And where did they get the information? You know, people will come into the bank and say, oh my God, I sent this bad person $20,000 because they told me that my son-in-law was involved in an accident and he lost his wallet in the car that was being towed away and he didn't have enough money to get home. How could they ever find out who my son-in-law was? Well, guess what? The woman had lost her husband 6 months before. The scammers used the obituary as one of their favorite books to read, and they call those people after 6 months or so because they've got all the information that they need from the obituary. They know where the person went to school, what their church is, who their kids are, what the person's maiden name was, what their mother's maiden name was. There is so much that is on the obituary that scammers can use. Also, survey calls. Again, due to isolation and loneliness, they will take a survey call. And the person will say, do you have any children or grandchildren in colleges? We're just doing a survey. And the woman's, oh, yes, my grandson, Johnny, just got accepted to Yale, and I'm so proud of him. Okay, the scammers sell that information. It goes up on the board with a big star on it, and in 6 months, the woman is called that Johnny has been in an accident, or Johnny is at the border in Canada or wherever, or on in a reservation in Arizona and has been arrested. So there are a lot of variations of the grandparent scam. Next, please. The sweetheart or romance scam. This is the
I apologize. I will try to get Angela back with us. Please hold for one moment.
Christy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please continue. Angela, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Angela, are you there? Angela, unmute your computer.
Can you hear me now? Great. So sorry for that. Okay. Where did we leave off? Where did you not hear me, Christy?
We were right here on the sweetheart.
People over
romance
60
tips.
were 5 times more likely to fall for this scam, which is a tech support scam, probably because they are more computer savvy than older adults. FTC last year in 2018, got 143,000 reports of this scam, where they actually get into the person's computer. If the person has financial information in there, they can get that. They're going to have to cancel all their banking accounts, have the computer completely cleaned, and then they can use it again. But it's a real pain, and many times they lose some serious money on these scams. So let's go on to Q&A. Sorry for the disruption. Okay, want to go on? Christy?
Yes, please go on. Angela, can you hear me?
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or enter your attendee ID number followed by pound.
It seems that Angela can't hear us while she's on her computer, so she's trying to call back in. I apologize for the inconvenience. If everyone could just stay muted, please.
I'm on now, Christy.
Okay, great. Can we continue with the presentation on this slide?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Where did
we end up, Christy?
We're on the IRS impersonation phone scam
Okay.
slide.
I'm so sorry that this just happened. IRS impersonation scams. As I said, this happened to one of my relatives, and she called me up and she said, Angela, they're going to come and take me to jail. She said, I don't remember that I didn't pay my taxes 10 years ago. And they say if I don't send them X amount of dollars, they're going to come and arrest me. I said, Aunt Mary, this is a scam. Do not worry about it. And she was so upset over it. But it does happen to older folks. So, and especially being that we have just paid our taxes in May, which was a little bit late, these scam artists are jumping on that bandwagon. Tech support scams. People over 60 were 5 times more likely to fall for a tech support scam rather than younger people. The younger people were born with a mouse in their hands, so they are a lot more computer savvy than someone in their late 70s or 80s. So they can fall for a tech support scam. Actually, one of my dear friends just did, and she is a psychologist. She's a really smart lady, but these people can outsmart you, okay? These people who are doing this tech support scam, they get into the computers and they can find out what your finances are, whatever. You have to get immediately after you realize, hopefully, that it is a scam, get to the bank, call the bank, close out your accounts. You're going to have to open all new accounts. You're going to call someone and get your computer cleaned before you can even use it again. So these tech support scams are happening very much. And the FTC got nearly 143,000 reports of this scam in 2018. I can just imagine what their statistics on getting these scams are in 2021 after COVID. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm so sorry for the bit of disruption, but do we have any questions? Christy?
Doesn't seem like we have any questions at this time. Let's pause for one moment and see if anyone writes any questions in the chat box. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we'll just close it out here. Thank you so much, Angela, for your time today and for such an informative webinar. Thank you to the COPS office for making this webinar possible. And thank you to our participants for joining. Please email me at kbarksdale@sheriffs.org with any questions. Thank you again for your time today. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy. Thank you.